Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Hey guys!
Let me start by explaining why I was at Walmart that day. My sister works long hours at the hospital, and since I work from home, I often watch my niece during the day. It's a win-win situation. My sister gets reliable childcare, and I get to spend time with my favorite 7-year-old. Plus, my job allows me to take breaks whenever needed, which makes it perfect for running errands with a kid in tow. This day happened right when the coronavirus panic was starting to set in. You know, that time when everyone suddenly decided they needed enough toilet paper to last through the apocalypse. My sister had mentioned we were running low at her house, so I figured I'd grab some while doing our usual grocery run. We'd already been to 3 stores that morning with no luck. My niece and I walked through Walmart, and I noticed how empty the shelves were getting. It was like watching one of those end-of-the-world movies where everything's picked clean. The few customers we passed looked anxious, their carts filled with whatever they could find. We turned down the paper goods aisle, and there it was, one lonely package of toilet paper sitting on an otherwise empty shelf. I grabbed it, feeling pretty lucky. That's when I felt someone basically stab my shoulder with their finger. I turned around to find this red-faced man glaring at me. His kid, probably around 10, stood next to him with the same entitled expression. Both were wearing expensive workout clothes that looked like they'd never seen a gym. The man demanded to know where I thought I was going with the toilet paper. When I simply replied that I was taking it home, he got even angrier. He started ordering me to restock the shelves, insisting that he needed more toilet paper. When I expressed my confusion, he went on a rant about how stupid the one package per customer rule was, and how his son supposedly needed it. His face was getting redder by the second, and I could smell coffee on his breath as he leaned closer. At this point, my niece was clutching my shirt so hard her knuckles were white. I could feel her trembling. No kid likes hearing adults yell. I handed her the toilet paper package so I could face this guy properly. She held on to it like it was her favorite teddy bear. Finally realizing what was happening, I tried to explain that I didn't work there and asked him to please find an actual employee, pointing out that he was scaring my niece. He refused to listen, insisting that I was an employee on break and that as a customer, he had first pick of the toilet paper. He kept gesturing at my casual clothes as if they were proof I worked there. Before I could respond, his kid suddenly darted forward and snatched the package right out of my niece's hands, running back to his dad like he'd just scored a touchdown. The force of it made my niece stumble backward. I was about to lose it when a Walmart employee appeared, looking completely done with everything. She had that weary look of someone who'd been dealing with similar situations all day. The employee called out the man, revealing that this was his 3rd time that week trying to take more than one package of toilet paper. I stood there confused until I noticed a second employee wheeling over a cart, and my jaw dropped. This guy had somehow hoarded an entire cart full of toilet paper packages somewhere in the store, probably hiding them behind other items or in different departments. The first employee told him they wouldn't check out that much toilet paper and that he needed to leave. The second employee started restocking the shelves, while the first one escorted the man and his kid out. They were trying to buy 10 packages. In the middle of a shortage, the employee who helped us grabbed one of the packages and handed it back to us, apologizing for the whole situation. To help my niece get over the scary encounter, I bought her an ice cream from the McDonald's inside Walmart. When we sat there eating our ice cream, we watched the man arguing with a manager in the parking lot, gesturing wildly while his kid mimicked his actions. His sunglasses fell off at one point, and he nearly stepped on them in his rage. Eventually, they got in their shiny SUV and peeled out of the parking lot empty-handed. When we were leaving, I overheard one employee telling another that they'd put this guy on some kind of watch list. Apparently, he'd been trying to buy out their toilet paper stock every few days, probably to resell it at inflated prices online. The store had finally had enough of his hoarding schemes. I later found out from another regular customer that he'd been banned from 3 other stores in the area for the same behavior. I'm a 16-year-old boy who's always had a special connection with toys. While most kids my age have moved on to video games and social media, I still find joy in collecting them. It's not just about the toys themselves, it's about the memories they hold and the happiness they bring. My little brother shares this passion with me, and seeing his face light up when he gets a new toy reminds me of myself at his age. When my little brother's birthday was approaching, I knew exactly what I wanted to get him. He had been obsessing over this limited edition toy for weeks, showing me commercials and magazine clippings whenever he could. The way his eyes sparkled when he talked about it made me determined to get it for him, no matter what. So, I woke up early one morning and headed to the local toy store, the excitement building in my chest as I walked through the doors, knowing I was on a mission to make my brother's birthday special. The store was bustling with activity, but I stayed focused on my goal. After searching through several aisles, I asked a sales associate about the limited edition toy. They apologetically told me that they were sold out. I was about to leave disappointed when I spotted it, the last one sitting on a shelf in the corner. The employee must have missed it. I quickly grabbed it, feeling accomplished and relieved. That's when everything went wrong. A woman, let's call her Karen, stormed over to me. She didn't even bother with pleasantries, just demanded that I give her the toy. I tried to explain that I had just picked it up and was planning to buy it, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept insisting that I hand it over. Before I could process what was happening, she pulled out a pocket knife and pressed it against my side, keeping it hidden from other shoppers. In a chilling whisper, she threatened me and demanded the toy again. My hands were shaking as I held onto it, but feeling the cold metal against my side, I knew she wasn't joking. To make matters worse, she then demanded that I not only give her the toy but also pay for it. I nodded slowly, too scared to argue. We walked to the cashier together, her knife still pressed against me. When I pulled out my wallet with trembling hands, the security manager approached us. He asked if everything was all right, clearly noticing something was off. Karen kept the knife hidden but pressed it harder against my side. When the security manager insisted she step away from me, she tried to brush him off, telling him to mind his own business and claiming we were just making a purchase. The security manager didn't buy it. He moved closer, and that's when Karen lost it. She pulled the knife away from my side and lunged at him, but he was ready. In one swift move, he grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back, making her drop the knife. He then called for someone to contact the police. While we waited for the police, I called my mother. She arrived at the store just as the police were putting Karen in handcuffs. When I explained everything that had happened, my mother was furious and immediately told the police she wanted to press charges, emphasizing how Karen had threatened her son with a knife over a toy. The police took statements from everyone involved, and the store's security cameras had captured everything. In court, they showed the security footage of her threatening me and attacking the security manager. The judge was clearly disgusted by her behavior and found her guilty of assault with a deadly weapon, attempted robbery, and extortion. When Karen tried to defend herself by claiming she was just trying to get a toy for her child, the judge shut her down immediately. He pointed out the severity of threatening a minor with a knife over a toy and sentenced her to 5 years in prison, with no possibility of early release. When I finally gave my brother his birthday present, his joy made everything worth it. But now when I go toy shopping, I always make sure to bring my mother or father with me. You never know when you might run into another Karen. Let me tell you about one of my most memorable experiences from my time working at what we call the fancy bowling alley in town. I worked in customer service for over 7 years, with most of that time spent at this establishment. The place attracted quite an interesting crowd, mostly because it was considered the high-end option in our mid-sized town. We had all the latest equipment, polished lanes, and even a decent restaurant attached, which meant we attracted both serious bowlers and families looking for a nice evening out. I was pretty good at handling most situations, even when dealing with entitled customers. Our pricing was straightforward. Lanes were rented by the hour, typically $20 per hour. We'd give everyone a 5-minute grace period when they started, and if there were mechanical issues or if a large group was near the end of their game, 8th frame or higher, we could offer an extra 15 minutes free of charge. Pretty reasonable, right? Well, let me tell you about this one family that came in. It was a father, mother, and their 2 young daughters. The father was someone I recognized from our bowling leagues, one of those guys who thought they were professional bowlers because they owned a rolling bowling bag and some worn-out bowling balls. He had this massive belly that seemed to be a common trait among our self-proclaimed pros. My co-workers had already warned me about him. Apparently, he had a history of trying to get free stuff from us. He'd complain about everything from the lane conditions to the temperature of his nachos, always trying to get something comped. They started their session and opened a tab since we also had food service. About an hour in, I heard this loud crash. Now, if you've worked at a bowling alley, you know that distinct sound when a bowling ball hits the sweep, the mechanism that clears the pins. There's this tiny window where someone could hit it while it's moving, and wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what this guy did. I knew right away what had happened because this wasn't the first time someone had pulled this trick. He waddled over to my counter and demanded that I fix the broken lane immediately. I told him I'd call our mechanic right away and apologize for the inconvenience. The lane monitor was showing the jammed arm code, so I called our mechanic. It took him 2 minutes to fix it, which was pretty standard for this type of issue. After the fix, the father insisted he deserved 15 minutes of free time for the interruption. Since it was the first incident, I gave him the free time. Big mistake. I could see the calculating look in his eyes as he walked back to his lane, and I had a sinking feeling this wouldn't be the last time. Not long after, when his time was running low again, the exact same thing happened. He came over and told me the lane was broken again, demanding more time. Against my better judgment, I gave him another free 15 minutes, but then it happened a third time. This time I charged him for the extra time. Our policy clearly stated we only give one free 15-minute extension, and this was posted at the front counter in big bold letters that were impossible to miss. Fourth time, same thing, I charged him. Fifth time, charged him again. I could see him getting more agitated each time I told him there would be a charge, but he kept doing it anyway. When he finally came to settle his tab, all hell broke loose. The father exploded in anger when he saw the charges, yelling that they were wrong and demanding to see my manager immediately. His face turned bright red, and he was practically spitting as he yelled. When my manager arrived, the father went on a rant about how I was an idiot and complained about our lanes constantly breaking down. He was furious about being charged for the extra time, conveniently forgetting that he was the one causing the problems. I explained to my manager that I had given him 2 free 15-minute extensions, which was already more than our posted policy allowed, and after that I charged him for the additional time due to repeated incidents. I made sure to mention how each breakdown happened suspiciously close to when his time was about to run out. My manager reviewed the tab and not only backed me up but also decided to charge him for that second free extension I'd given him. My manager explained that according to our clearly posted policy, he needed to pay for all extensions except the first one. She even pointed to the sign right behind us as she spoke. The father completely lost it then. He started ranting about how our lanes were garbage and swore he'd never return to our establishment. His face was purple by this point, and his wife looked mortified as she tried to quietly usher their daughters toward the door. He stormed out after paying, cursing the whole way, and making sure everyone in the building could hear his opinions about our establishment and staff. He showed up for league night 3 days later, acting like nothing had happened. He even had the nerve to try to joke with me about lane conditions. He knew exactly what he'd been doing. He was just mad that he finally got caught trying to scam us for free time. After that, though, he never tried the broken lane trick again. I've been working at a makeup counter inside a large department store for about 3 years now. It's a pretty sweet gig. We rent our space from the department store but operate independently. Think of it like those Starbucks inside Target, you know? We have our own inventory, prices, and systems separate from the main store. This detail becomes important later. So the other day, I'm organizing our display when these two older women with thick European accents approach my counter. The first one, who I'll call Karen, is wearing this massive diamond ring that immediately catches my eye. It's honestly hard to miss. Her friend is trailing behind her like a shadow. Karen slapped a coat on my counter and demanded to know the price with the discount. I apologized and explained that I couldn't check that for her since we're a separate store within the department store, so I don't have access to their discount information. Karen asked me what I meant by not being able to check, questioning if I actually worked there. I confirmed that I did work there, but explained we're like a store within a store. I pointed to the main service desk, which was less than 20 feet away, telling her they could help with exact discount information. Her friend scoffed at my explanation, clearly unimpressed. Karen's voice started rising as she asked if I was stupid and insisted I just check the price. I tried explaining again that I physically couldn't check their discounts because our system is completely separate from the department store system. Karen, now practically shouting, accused me of being lazy and not wanting to do my job. I attempted to express understanding of her frustration while reiterating that I literally couldn't access their discount information, again suggesting the nearby service desk could help immediately. This back and forth continued for what felt like an eternity but was probably about 10 minutes. I tried explaining it every way I could think of, using analogies, speaking slower, even drawing a little diagram on a piece of paper, but they were having none of it. Finally, Karen completely lost it. She wound up like a baseball pitcher and yelled at me to hold the coat. And I kid you not, she straight up threw the coat at my stomach. It was a heavy winter coat too, so it actually hurt. Then they both stormed off, muttering in their language. I just took the coat and hung it on a nearby rack. It wasn't our merchandise, so honestly I couldn't care less what happened to it at that point. About 30 minutes later, I hear this blood-curdling scream from across the store. Guess who comes running back to my counter? Karen, but this time she's crying hysterically. Through her sobs, she told me she had lost her ring, claiming it was worth $15,000 and was pure 24-karat gold with diamonds. I expressed my sympathy but told her I hadn't seen any ring. Karen immediately pointed at me and blamed me for the loss, saying if I had just checked the price, she wouldn't have lost her ring. Her friend jumped in, agreeing that I had made Karen upset and insisted that I should help them look. I looked around my counter area, but I knew it was pointless. They had been wandering all over the store for the past half hour. I suggested they might want to check with store security, but they weren't really listening anymore. What happened next was almost comical. These two women spent the next 5 hours running around the store like headless chickens, looking under every rack, checking every corner, and harassing every employee they could find. They even got down on their hands and knees with their phone flashlights, crawling around the floors. They never found the ring. I checked with our general manager yesterday. It's been almost a week now, and nope, still no sign of the ring. I thought maybe if she hadn't been so nasty about a simple price check, if she hadn't thrown merchandise at me, and if she had just walked those 20 feet to the service desk, she'd still have her precious ring. Let me tell you about one of the craziest experiences I had with a roommate during my first time living away from home. I was fresh out of high school, working a minimum wage job, and finally managed to get my own place with two other people I thought were my friends. Look, I knew living with others would have its challenges, but I wasn't prepared for what was about to unfold. At the time, I was also dealing with some legal troubles. I had to complete a bunch of community service hours at this animal rescue ranch. I spent my days cleaning up after all sorts of animals, from peacocks to potbelly pigs. But the absolute worst were the llamas. Those creatures were demons in disguise. They would spit at you, chase you around, and make these ungodly, screaming noises. And here's something most people don't know. Llamas have this weird habit of all pooping in the same spot. It's like their sacred toilet ground or something, and they get really territorial about it. But my real problem was back at the apartment. One of my roommates, let's call him the food thief, had this infuriating habit of eating everyone else's food. He didn't care what it was or who it belonged to. My biggest grievance? My Reese's Puff cereal. I love that stuff and he kept demolishing entire boxes of it. I tried talking to him multiple times about eating my cereal. He would always act apologetic and claim he didn't know it was mine, promising to replace it. Of course, he never did. This cycle repeated itself with every box he ate. One day, while I was shoveling the llama poop pile at the ranch, I had this moment of brilliant clarity. The llama droppings were these small, light pellets that came in different shades of brown, from light peanut butter color to dark chocolate. They looked exactly like Reese's Puffs cereal. The plan formed instantly. I bought a new box of Reese's Puffs on my way home, carefully emptied the cereal into a container for myself, and filled the bag with llama pellets. I even used a chip clip and rolled the bag exactly how I usually did, placing it in its usual spot on top of the fridge. That night, around 10 p.m., I heard Food Thief's familiar routine. He got up, smoked some weed, as usual, and started his nightly food raid. I sat in my bedroom, listening intently. The kitchen floor creaked under his feet. The cereal bag rustled. The fridge opened for milk. A drawer opened for a spoon. Then he walked to the couch and sat down. I waited for the screaming, the gagging, the realization that he was eating llama poop. Instead, I heard crunching, then more crunching. Then he turned on the TV and kept eating. He was so high that he couldn't tell the difference between cereal and llama droppings. This went on for days. He kept eating the cereal without ever realizing what it was. I was both impressed and disturbed by his complete lack of awareness. Our lease ended up getting terminated about a month later due to various issues with our third roommate. On our last day in the apartment, while we were all moving out, I finally confronted him about the Reese's Puffs he'd been eating the previous month. When I revealed they were actually llama droppings from the ranch, he just stood there in shock. After a moment of stunned silence, he bolted to the bathroom and started throwing up violently. Our other roommate found the whole situation hilarious and couldn't stop laughing. Meanwhile, the food thief emerged from the bathroom, furious and disgusted, demanding to know what was wrong with me. I simply reminded him that he had ignored my multiple requests to stop eating my food. He didn't say another word to me for the rest of the move-out process. He moved back in with his parents and now has a weird aversion to any kind of breakfast cereal. Can't imagine why. I come from a long line of business owners, and this story has been passed down through generations in my family. It all started with my great-great-grandfather, who built his life from nothing after gaining his freedom in the years before the Civil War. He fought in the war alongside a wealthy man who went against his family's wishes to fight for what he believed was right. They formed an unlikely but strong friendship during their service, watching each other's backs through countless battles. My great-great-grandfather even helped carry his friend to safety when he lost his leg in combat. After the war, with his savings and determination, my great-great-grandfather opened a small shop in Boston. He met my great-great-grandmother during the war, and together they turned that shop into something special. We sold everything from basic groceries to tools for workers, and our reputation for fair prices and honest business grew quickly. The neighborhood loved us, and we became a cornerstone of the community. For 10 years, we built our life there, had 3 beautiful children, made countless friends, and thought we'd found our place in the world. Then he showed up. I'll never forget the day that entitled businessman walked into our shop. He'd been a plantation owner before the war, fought for the wrong side, and only switched allegiances when he saw which way the wind was blowing. He'd lost his slaves but managed to keep his wealth by betraying his former allies. The first time he came in, he was all smiles and business talk. He told me he'd been buying up promising shops in the area and that ours had caught his attention. He wanted to discuss what he called a fair price. But then he saw who owned the store. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. His smile disappeared as he suggested that perhaps I should consider something more suitable for my kind, like farm work. He offered to take the establishment off my hands for what he called a reasonable sum. When I told him my shop wasn't for sale, he tried to convince me to be sensible, claiming people like me weren't meant for this kind of work. He offered $5,000 for it. The offer was less than half what the shop was worth. When I left him out, things got ugly. Windows started getting broken. Deliveries went missing. Thugs would come in and harass customers. We endured it all until they went after my oldest boy. He was just 13, walking home from his evening job at the bakery when they jumped him. Beat him so badly he carried the scars for the rest of his life. That's when I knew we had to leave. But I wasn't about to let that entitled man win. As luck would have it, my old war buddy had written to me about a position on his new farm out west. Good pay, a house for my family, and most importantly, respect. The timing couldn't have been better. I went to the businessman's office and told him I'd reconsidered his offer. I explained that the harassment and violence had won, and I would sell. He smugly replied that since I was finally seeing reason, his offer was now only $4,000. Take it or leave it. I countered with $7,500, pointing out that it was 75% of the actual value, and he knew it was a steal. His eyes lit up with greed, thinking he'd broken me. We drew up the contract specifying that ownership would transfer at midnight on the signing date. He was so eager to humiliate me by taking my business that he didn't think about what might happen before midnight. That day, we held the biggest sale our neighborhood had ever seen. Everything went for pennies on the dollar. Tools, food, supplies, all of it to our loyal customers who'd stood by us through the hard times. We even sold the shelving units and counters to other shop owners. At 11:59 p.m. I posted the keys through his office mailbox. By dawn, we were on our way west to start our new life. I heard later that he showed up the next morning with a crew of workers ready to take over his new acquisition. Instead of a thriving business, he found an empty shell. No inventory, no fixtures, not even a delivery schedule since I'd canceled all our contracts. He'd paid $7,500 for 4 walls and a roof. Most of our old customers boycotted any business he tried to open there. The building stood empty for months before he had to sell it at a loss. Meanwhile, my family thrived on my friend's farm. We built a new life free from harassment and prejudice, and I lived to see all 3 of my children grow into successful adults themselves. Let me tell you how I got caught up in this mess with a neighbor from hell and ended up with an unexpected new family member. I just landed my dream job as a software developer, and after years of living with roommates, I was finally able to afford renting a house on my own. The place was perfect, quiet neighborhood, decent size, and best of all, pet-friendly. I'd adopted my cat from a shelter 2 years prior, a tailless goofball I called Goblin because of his chaotic energy. He was strictly an indoor cat, and we were perfectly happy that way. Everything was great until I actually moved in. My parents, being the sweethearts they are, drove 3 hours to help me with the move. We had a U-Haul parked in front of my new house, technically blocking a dead-end sidewalk, but it wasn't like we were planning to camp there forever. That's when I first met my neighbor. She came storming out of her house, yelling and demanding to know what we thought we were doing. My mom, sweet as always, turned around with her warm smile and explained that we were just moving me in and would be done in a couple of hours. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She started screaming about how we were ruining the community and that this was a residential area, not a parking lot. My dad tried to calm things down by assuring her we'd be as quick as possible, but she just kept going. She ranted for nearly 30 minutes, longer than we'd even been parked there. Eventually, my parents, being the conflict-avoidant people they are, moved the truck way down the street, making our move significantly more difficult. I soon discovered this wasn't even the worst thing about her. She had this beautiful tabby cat that she treated like a mere pest control device. The poor thing was obviously underfed, and she'd let her grandkids terrorize him on weekends under the guise of playing. The only silver lining was that the cat would come to my porch for food and attention, which I happily provided. Then came the flea incident. My goblin managed to slip outside one day when I was bringing in groceries. I found him after a few hours of panic, but the next morning I discovered an unwelcome visitor, a flea. If my indoor cat had fleas, I was certain her outdoor cat was infested too. Despite our history, I decided to be neighborly and warn her. When I knocked on her door, she opened it with a nasty scowl. I tried to nicely explain about my cat getting fleas and warned her that her cat might have them too. But instead of being grateful for the warning, she immediately started yelling at me. She called me irresponsible for letting my cat get fleas and bragged about how spotless her house was compared to my supposedly filthy one. She insisted her cat couldn't possibly have fleas. I pointed out that she'd never even been in my house and that's not how fleas work, but she just kept yelling as I walked away. I couldn't stop thinking about her poor cat, who I kept seeing scratching himself raw. I wanted to help him, but she'd start screaming if I even looked at him now. That's when I remembered something interesting I'd overheard her bragging about. She was keeping her cat a secret from our landlord to avoid paying pet rent. The same landlord who'd recently replaced all her carpet because she claimed to have cat allergies. The same landlord who was extremely strict about pest control. I made the call. When I told the landlord about the flea problem with my cat, I made sure to mention that I'd noticed my neighbor's cat scratching a lot too. There was a long pause when he realized she had a cat. That's when I learned she'd not only scammed him into replacing her carpet with her fake allergy claim, but had also been dodging pet rent the entire time. When the exterminator was scheduled, I might have accidentally removed the notice from her door so she couldn't hide the evidence. The day of reckoning was beautiful. From my open window, I heard the whole thing. She tried to prevent them from entering, claiming she never got any notice. The landlord told her this was a scheduled inspection and to step aside. She stuttered and protested, but it was useless. The evidence of her cat was everywhere. Food bowls, litter box, cat hair. 2 weeks later, she was given notice to vacate. In her spite, she left her cat behind, probably thinking she was punishing me since she'd seen me feeding him. Little did she know that was the best gift she could have given me. The tabby, now flea-free and properly fed, became the perfect brother for Goblin. My house may not be spotless by Karen standards, but it's filled with love, purrs, and 2 very happy cats. 6 years ago, my life was at its lowest point financially. After my mother got sick and needed constant care, I had to drop out of college to help support the family. The only job I could find was working at a warehouse, packing boxes for minimum wage. The work was mind-numbing, but at least it was full-time and had health insurance. Between helping with mom's medical bills and keeping a roof over our heads, I barely had enough left for basic necessities. I usually skipped lunch to save money. A pack of cigarettes lasted me a week since I rationed them carefully, taking just 1 smoke break per shift to maintain my sanity. The warehouse was in an industrial area with several small restaurants nearby, and the smell of food would torture me during my breaks as I watched others walk by with their takeout bags. That day started like any other. I was taking my smoke break in the designated area behind the building when something caught my eye, a rewards card lying on the ground. I picked it up and realized it was a fully stamped card from the local Italian restaurant down the street. 10 stamps, all neatly lined up, promising a free meal complete with pasta, salad, and a drink. I checked both sides of the card carefully, looking for any catch or fine print, but there weren't any conditions listed besides presenting the card for redemption. When lunch break came, I practically ran to the restaurant. I only had 30 minutes, and our supervisor was strict about punch times. The place was completely empty when I walked in, with just an older woman standing at the host station. Through the kitchen door, I could hear the clattering of pots and pans and smell the rich aroma of tomato sauce, making my stomach growl audibly. I approached the counter and politely requested a to-go order using the rewards card. The woman took one look at me, probably noting my warehouse uniform and worn-out shoes, and her face twisted into a scowl. She immediately told me that the offer was for dine-in only. When I questioned this, pointing out that there were no such restrictions listed on the card, she simply repeated that it was their policy, becoming more stern with each word. Her voice carried that certain tone that people use when they think they're better than you. I looked around the empty restaurant and checked my watch. 25 minutes left. After a moment's thought, I told her that, in that case, I would like a table instead. I could see her internal struggle as she realized She had no legitimate reason to refuse me service. Her expression soured even more, but she grabbed a menu and led me to a table, practically throwing it down in front of me. I ordered exactly what the card offered: spaghetti with marinara sauce, house salad, and a soft drink. Each time she brought something to the table, she wore this artificial smile that didn't reach her eyes. The other staff members watched our interaction from a distance, some looking sympathetic, others simply staying out of it. After delivering everything, she asked in a falsely sweet tone if everything was to my satisfaction and if I needed anything else. When I requested some to-go boxes, her fake smile vanished instantly. She turned on her heel without a word and disappeared into the kitchen, muttering something under her breath. A few moments later, a younger server brought out the boxes, offering an apologetic smile. I packed everything carefully but quickly, making sure not to spill anything. The pasta went into one container, the remaining salad into another, and I even poured my drink into a to-go cup. I could feel the woman glaring at me from across the restaurant as I gathered my things. Other customers had started to arrive for lunch, watching the scene unfold with curious expressions. I left the rewards card on the table and walked out with my head held high, hearing the woman complaining loudly to another server about people taking advantage. Back at work, I saved a meal for my afternoon break. Sitting in the break room, I savored every bite of that spaghetti. The sauce was rich and flavorful, the noodles perfectly cooked, and even the slightly wilted salad tasted amazing. My co-workers commented on how good it smelled, and I shared the story with them, earning a few laughs and high fives for my creative solution. Maybe it was because I was so hungry, or perhaps it was the satisfaction of outsmarting that condescending woman, but it really was the best free spaghetti I've ever had. The next day I noticed they'd put up a new sign in their window specifying that reward redemptions were dine-in only. But it was worth it. For one brief moment I'd managed to beat a system that always seemed stacked against me, and I did it by following their own rules to the letter. Sometimes I still drive past that restaurant and smile, remembering the look on that woman's face when I asked for the to-go boxes. It might have been just a small victory, but when you're down and out, those small victories mean everything. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.